All right, hi everyone. All right, hi everyone. All right, we're live now.
I can't hear you.
Okay. Hi everyone. Good afternoon and good morning wherever you're joining from. Oh, you can't hear me. Sorry.
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You can hear me now. Great. So everyone else, if you can hear me, welcome to yet another session. You know, for of Startup South. Startup South sessions. You already know that every Friday we come here together to have some some professionals put us through some things for the community's benefit. Today is, first and foremost, sorry, I wasn't able to join in the last two sessions, and I had fantastic people, hosting the sessions from the last two sessions, and they were awesome. I've heard lots of stories and lots of testimonies from, those sessions, and I'm particularly happy that they went the way they went. We're going to be having a lot more people come host this for us, as we move. So you know how we do it. Just say hello. David says African time. David, apologies that we're starting late. We had a bit of technical issues we needed to fix. So please apologize for that. We'll try not to do African time. Okay. So now that you're here, David, please tell us where you're joining us from. Tell us what you do. Tell us what your company does. Tell us where you're joining us from. And if you have particular questions, remember to ask in the comment section. And I believe that the questions will get answered as I'm watching I'm watching the comments, and I'll take all the questions as much as possible. Okay. And do me a favor. Palm Drive, welcome Palm Drive. Please tell us where you're coming from or where you're joining us from, so that Chika will know that Chika will know the speaker today that are listening to him. So please tell us where you're joining from. As you already know, Startup South, we're inspiring a generation of founders building, scalable ventures, particularly from the south, and the southeast. Okay, so let's build ventures that can provide opportunities for a greater number of our people and create prosperity across the land. So this is the goal that we've chosen to do, and we're glad that you're here to join us in this goal and that you're also building something great. So one last thing I ask you to do before I talk about I would like for you to take the link of this video and share across social media, and let's get more people to join us. Ezieke Ahamefle is joining from Port Harcourt. Apparently he's the CEO of Palm Drive, an e-hailing and on-demand ride company based in Port Harcourt. Welcome, Eke. David Sullivan is joining from Enugu. David, thank you and welcome. So please do me a favor, share the link of the session across social media, WhatsApp groups that you belong, and ask them to join, because this topic today is a very, very important topic. We're discussing product development, right? That's what we're discussing today. A lot of startup founders are actually, they are stuck trying to raise money. They feel they're doing all the right things. They're taking all the right lessons about raising money. But the truth, the absolute truth about raising money is that when you build something that is of value and people recognize that value, we're talking about customers now, investors have no choice than to back you to scale that value. That's the absolute truth about raising money. Okay, so we thought that instead of coming to talk to you in February about how to raise money, it was better to talk to you about how to create better products. Okay, so I think you should pay more attention to how to create better products, and capture a captive audience or captive customers, so that investors will support you, because what their money basically comes to do is to help you scale something that is already working for you. Okay, that's very key. And the guest we have today is an expert in product development. And today we're basically going to be discussing how do you build products that customers love and would are willing to continue to reward you with money. Okay? You remember the last time we talked about how to go online, how to take your business online? That was the last session we had. And one of the key things from there was that you needed to build products, right? So today we're going to be discussing how do you build products that customers would love. Now, I've spoken for almost 6-7 minutes now. And I think that if you've shared the links already, I want to see you type done. Type done in the chat so that I know you've shared the links, and then I'm going to invite Chika to come on. So please, can you type done in the comments and let us know that you've shared the link? If you don't know where to get the link, just look around where have the share button and then copy the link and then share it across WhatsApp groups and across social media handles, so that we can have more people join us for these sessions. And most importantly, I need to ask questions. Most importantly, you need to ask questions, because that's what's going to help us unearth the struggles you're having. If you listen to this session without asking questions, thank you, Nuruddin. Thank you, AK. Thank you so much, David. Thank you for doing that. So let's go on. I'm going to be inviting. So I'm going to be introducing Chika to us right now. As you already know from the stuff we shared, Chika is a product manager at Google, and before joining Google, or Chika is still the co-founder of TipHub, which is Chika. TipHub is like another version of Startup South, right? But based in the US.
Yes, it's
similar to what Startup South is doing, but for the Black community, right?
No, it's actually for. I can hear. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, very well. I can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Go ahead. I can hear you, Chika.
No, we actually do a lot of work in Nigeria, and in other countries as well. So we're some would say a global organization, but our focus is Our focus is specifically on places like Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, even some areas in the US.
Awesome. Awesome. Interesting. All right. So I'm going to drop, if you want to know more about Chika, I'm dropping his bio on the links. You can click the link and then go read some more about Chika, right? So Chika is joining us today to talk about product development and how to build products that customers love. Chika, I'm going to be turning this over to you right now. You have some slides, obviously, you want to share. So let me make it possible for you to share your slides. Is that okay?
Yes. Let me know when you can see it.
I think so. Go ahead and share the slide. To share your slides now.
Okay, perfect. All right. So the name of this presentation is Building Products That Matter, Building the Right.
Welcome. Setup is. All right, so why the people that are.
All right. I guess since Uche has dropped, I can get started. My name is Chico Umadi. I'm going to be presenting today on a concept and area that's really near and dear to me. Title is Building Products That Matter, and we're going to focus on building for the right market and the right customers. So just kind of a walkthrough of what we're going to go through today. I have a quick intro for you to learn a little bit more about me. I'm going to give you a little story for context, and then I'm also going to give you some caution areas that will kind of contextualize what we're going to go through. We'll talk a little about goals, and then I'll talk about a segment of strategies that are kind of product 1.0. The way I think about it are things that we did when we didn't have as many resources as product managers. Product 2.0 is a little bit more of like agile strategies to help you take advantage of your skill sets and your capabilities. And then we'll conclude with questions and answers. So as I mentioned, my name is Chico Madi. I'm a co-founder at TipHub. TipHub is a firm focused on investing and supporting the next generation of African and African diaspora entrepreneurs at the intersection of impact and technology. We've been in operations for about the last 7 years. We've worked with over 100, probably 100 or so companies, and translated that into millions of dollars of capital raised, great partnerships, exits. So we've been around for a while. A lot of companies we've worked with in Nigeria, companies in Tanzania, et cetera, et cetera. Also the co-founder of a company called Parallel Scores, a product development studio in Lagos. We work on emerging tech opportunities and leverage the brilliance of not just Nigerian coders, but product managers, designers to build themes globally and solve issues locally. And then lastly, when I'm During the day, I'm also a product manager at Google. I manage automated campaigns for installs in the ad business. And my overall mission in life is really to transform the world leveraging tech um, and equitable business models and good people. I believe that those are the three things you need to really transform the world as we see it. Um, let me see. Okay, I was just reading the comments. I'll try to stay between here and the comments. All right, so quick story. Um, I was, this was me about, let's say, um, this was me about like 8 or 9 years ago. First startup I worked on was a social media analytics company. We had a great platform. We were years ahead of the competition, and there were not many competitors, direct competitors in our space. We got great customers. We had some of the best customers. We had like really like good channel partners. But Trempo failed as a company. It was essentially acquired for nothing, but it was acquired nonetheless. But it essentially failed as a business, right? And why? Um, I believe that while we had good products, we had a reasonable couple of customers. Um, the market and the tweaks on the product were not correct and not aligned, and what we'll talk about today will help drive that conversation a little bit more and give more context to what happened. So three major goals. This is like, outside of, other things I do, I teach product management at General Assembly here in the United States. But what we're about to go through is probably 3 sessions worth of content. So I'm going to skim over very quickly, and we can ask questions as we kind of as they come up. But this is very much so an introduction, right? But I want to give you things that you can use right away. I want you things that are digestible and you can understand, and then I also want to use this as a gateway to explore new themes. So those are kind of my three main goals. Not going to solve everything, which I'll get into here. I'm not going to solve everything just because there's so many variables, right? There's an art and science to product management, and product management varies in so many different scenarios. Um, so for me, a lot of this is, give the tools and then kind of help think about, where you can be positioned to make the best decisions. Another thing, I'm going to talk from a software perspective. Most of the product development I've done has been in software. But these same concepts can be used in these other areas, but there's small variants that end up being a significant change in how you approach them. So I'm going to mostly focus on software, but a lot of this is transferable into hardware or services. Lastly, a lot of the things I'm going to say depend on where you're coming from. So, you know, are you cash strapped? Are you in a big company? Are you in a medium-sized company? Are you venture backed? All of these different things are going to kind of drive your strategy. Um, but most of the time, those are kind of things you should think about as you're kind of taking this into digesting a lot of these ideas that I'm going to throw out. So kind of just to, these will be product 1.0 strategies, I call them. These are things that, most of us probably know. They're probably like textbook by the book ways to think about prioritization and think about think about evaluating particular areas that we're going to talk about. So 3 areas, we're going to talk about evaluating the market opportunity, we're going to talk about prioritizing customers, and then we're going to be talking about prioritizing features. So evaluating the the market opportunity, right? So this goes into standard opportunity assessments, thinking about business case, thinking about market, thinking about customer type, thinking about like the big picture, right? Of how you can play in it. One of the things that I know a lot of people don't really think about, or a lot of people forget to add to their overall kind of narrative, is the macro trends that signal a change in the market that make it an opportunistic time. Like for example, right? Just the forceful hand of the CBN today is essentially, cryptocurrency is a macro trend. Crypto has essentially forced the CBN's hand to stop banks from working with crypto companies. And so what does how can like a um peer-to-peer like platform leverage that scenario, right? Crypto, regulation is going to happen, but how can you regulate peer-to-peer transactions, right? So that's something that, even though CBN can do something, there's still, an area of opportunity to say, hey, this is happening, but we can leverage this to circumvent regulation or capture this trend or opportunity. Another thing that just kind of like what I mentioned, external market conditions, regulation, population sizes, healthcare change, like as I mentioned before, changes in the status quo can help drive what you decide as, a viable market opportunity. And then, TAM, SAM, and SOM. These are, for any consultant or any kind of marketing expert, these are kind of these acronyms are pretty standard. But what they mean are total addressable market, serviceable addressable market, and then serviceable obtainable market. And essentially, you come up with a big picture of all of the total market opportunity, which is oftentimes what is spent on a given industry. And then you say, you segment that based on like the area that you're interested in. And then once again, you segment that on the area that you can actually go out and get. And this is supposed to kind of be like a back of the hand marketing exercise that helps you think about the market opportunity, either from a top down, so top down saying like this is the biggest opportunity and we're just going to cut it down, or bottom up. So you can either say bottom as in, let's think about all of the people from the ground up, or let's think about all the customers from the ground up, and then build out our market sizing from there. But this is super helpful in kind of beginning the conversation around, is this an opportunistic market for me? Is this a market that I should prioritize? And the market sizing helps with that. And then on kind of prioritizing customers, some of the things that I think about are building out, once you've kind of thought about your serviceable obtainable market, you now also have to look at, okay, who are those individuals within that market, right? What are the type of customers that I'm thinking about? So you also have to think about customer personas. Customer personas help you create an attribute of different attributes of a particular type of customer that you want to go after. What are they thinking? What are they spending? What kind of demographic data can help you kind of think a little bit more about them? Where do they stay? What are their problems? These are all things that you can use to kind of start to create essentially narratives around your customers so that you can better understand them, right? Because you can't prioritize what you don't understand. And then another thing to think about is, once you've kind of gotten your customer persona, one of the areas you also want to think about is the customer adoption curve. The customer adoption curve is a concept that essentially takes a kind of normative, a normative, graph, distribution graph, and says that at every given point, like there's a certain group of customers that will be opportunistic for you. So for example, and this becomes a real big problem for a lot of companies as they're uh, building out their product. So for example, I think with my project with Trendpo, as previously mentioned, one of the things that we did is that we built our product initially for the early adopters. And so early adopters are people that are they're very interested in technology. They're very interested in innovation. They're going to try your product before other people will, just because they like trying products. How many of you have, multiple apps on your phone that you're not using, right? How many of you just, like download an app, probably use it once just to use it? Those are the kind of people that, that are early adopters. And then there's there's the kind of the later adopters. There's the majority, the middle majority, and then there's the matured audience, right? So think about people that, I think one of the good examples is that, there are some people that won't, will wait 3 or 4 generations to get an iPhone because they just want it to get stable, right? Some people get the iPhone. Some people got the iPhone first. Some people wait later to get the iPhone. And so when you think about that distribution curve, those are the kind of things that you're thinking about. Like early adopters are going to get the phone early on, and then later, as you look at like later stage adopters or later adopters, more mature adopters, like laggards, those people will wait. And oftentimes you kind of have to look to the customer persona to understand why they're waiting, right? Some people just have just don't like change, right? Some people are very much focused on, hey, I don't like changing the status quo. What I have works for me. I don't want to see anything else, right? And for better or for worse, right? So that's something to think about as you're kind of putting you're thinking about where your customers fit on the adoption curve. Another thing though, if I had more time, I'd just be showing visuals of all of these things, but just put this together yesterday. But on Another thing to think about is painkillers versus vitamin versus Gucci bag. And I say this, this is kind of a variation on something I've done research on. And so when you think about what customers really need, and let's take a human for perspective for example. Um, Customers have a pain, right? Sometimes customers have a pain. They need the painkiller. We should go to the If we have painkillers, we should go to the customer that has pain, right? But sometimes a customer doesn't, sometimes a customer comes to, says, oh, this is yeah, this would be nice. And it's kind of like a vitamin, right? So vitamins are nice to have, right? They're helpful, but they don't really do anything for pain, right? Somebody's in acute pain, they need they need something to remedy that right away. There are implications to being in pain. Vitamins are more, they're supplementary, right? Like they're helpful. And then a Gucci bag, the way that I look at it is that it it may not be a vitamin or painkiller. It just may be a signal, right? It's not necessarily, it's a premium item. It's a premium perceived value, right? So I think those are the kind of things that, on top of the adoption curve, you also have to figure out what kind of customers are where customers are on the adoption curve, but then ultimately, what are they looking for? Are they looking for that pain of a solution, or are they looking for, something supplementary, or are they looking for a Gucci bag? And most of us as entrepreneurs will want to go and get the painkiller type of customers. We'll want to solve the painkiller problems, and that will help. Once you kind of look at it from that perspective, you're solving a customer pain that will help kind of align you and focus you on the areas that are best suited early on, especially when you want to create value right away. And then lastly, what I also like to think about when I'm thinking about prioritizing customers is this area around, how do we align customers with our internal capabilities, right? So um, when we think about, areas of competency for our team, um, are we are we going to be customer service driven? Are we going to be product operations driven? Are we going to be, are we, all of these things translate to, are we going to be high touch in the experience? Are we going to be low touch and build like a very seamless experience? Most of the time, early stage for a lot of people, you need to be high touch. And one of the mistakes that I see with a lot of founders is that they try to get a lot of customers very quickly, and then they try to kind of focus less on the customer experience when they get the customers. But to be completely honest, there's more value in tailoring the customer experience for a couple of customers, than going out and getting a ton of customers, especially when those customers can help you get more customers because they have a differentiated customer experience. And so that has to be thought about as you're thinking about, okay, what are my internal capabilities to actually deliver this kind of value to customers in an onboarding process or a customer experience process? And you have to drive that. Also kind of drives into, where you prioritize your time and your resources. So kind of diving in a little bit deeper, you've prioritized your market, you've prioritized the kind of customer segments you want to go through, and now you want to prioritize features. There are so many different ways to prioritize features, right? And we'll talk about the inputs of them in a little bit. There's the Rice model, value versus effort, Kano model, story mapping, Moscow method, by a feature. To be completely honest, all of these are essentially a calculation of three things. One, how much effort will it take me to do this? How much effort will, or not effort, but how much value does this bring to my customer? And then where are we positioned to be able to deliver this, right? Essentially, that's what all of these come down to. I can spend like a whole 3 hours going through each of them, but I think this is a good place to say, hey, in traditional in the reality of a product manager's life, we have to do trade-offs very often. And so you need a framework as a product manager, or even as a product manager founder, to figure out, okay, what gets done versus what doesn't get done. And the three constraints are ultimately, I need resources, I need to figure out what the customer, like, I can get for the biggest bang for my buck for the customer. And then I need to also think about like the backlog of other things that need to happen. So all of these are kind of driving that, right? One of the ones that I use pretty kind of just off the cuff very early with founders when I speak with them is buy a feature, right? So let's say there's 10 features, right? And let's say there's 10 features and they're equally prioritized for by by customers, right? So what we would do is we would just say, hey, you have $100. Each feature costs, $20. Pick 5 features, right? And so, just go through the exercise of saying, hey, there's 5 features. These are the ones that I would put my money on. That's a quick way to say, that's what we're going to go with, and then you can take a deeper dive into, kind of the explanations around why and all of those things. But all that to say, um, this is essentially what drives the prioritization of features in a product 1.0 reality, right? um, and so before I go before I go into the next section, does anyone have any questions? I'm looking at the live chat right now. If you have any questions, drop them in, and then I'll try to answer them before I go into this next area.
I guess we should just go ahead with the. I guess we should just go ahead. If there are
Okay.
questions, I'll read them out.
Okay, perfect. All right. And so kind of shifting gears a little bit more, I think of these next kind of conversations as like product 2.0 strategies. You have to think about like the concept in the perspective in how a lot of these 1.0 processes were put in place. There's a lot back in the day, there are a lot of costs of building products, right? If you wanted to build a mobile app 10 or 15 years ago, you better have been sure that there was light at the end of the tunnel, right? All the things that we take for granted now, cloud, internet, other infrastructure, like things like AWS, um, uh, Google Cloud, all those things, right? We take those for granted, but that's infrastructure we don't have to deal with, right? The maturity of code, or like open source code, or maturity of programming languages that drive faster, development processes. Like all of these things have kind of shifted the paradigm in product. And even the one of the areas that I'm super interested in, the proliferation of no code tools, right? I'll kind of get into that in a little bit, but the two areas I'll focus on is community driven product development and hypothesis driven prioritization. And those are the two areas that I think, as founders, these are two major opportunities. And ultimately I'll get into it later, but these can help drive kind of your product 1.0 strategies and tactics. So in terms of the kind of key drivers, as I mentioned, for product 2.0, cheaper and easier access to large groups of people. That's a huge thing. Easier than ever to capture data on individuals. That was a whole issue. Like, prior to social media, it's just hard to, get data on people in a scalable manner. And that makes building digital communities a lot easier than it used to be. And that's something that's very opportunistic there. And then all of this is translated to cheaper idea validation. So it's way cheaper to validate things than it used to be back in the day. So a lot of these concepts in the product 1.0 world just don't really mesh with aren't really like positioned to support us as much now. So and here's the thing, a lot of us already do this already, right? So it's a lot of this is probably not new. But one of the areas that I'm interested in exploring, and I've been like interested in watching companies build, is in this kind of community first product development process, right? One of the key areas I see, is that founders are building communities around common concerns and challenges. There's a company in South Africa that is essentially builds a platform for moms to help them be better moms, right? And so the idea of being a better mother, like, is being able to have, like, think about all the first time moms, or like the moms that, that are having challenges around things. Think about creating a community where moms can just like share things and challenges and kind of support each other. Well, as a result of moms sharing and supporting each other, there are a bunch of like cross-selling, product platform opportunities that come as a result of that. You can start marketing to moms. You can start giving moms the opportunity to drive product development for other like major brands, right? You can actually start to now think about, hey, maternity is an issue. How do we help solve for maternity, right? Those are all things that come as a result of being in the community, building a community around like a specific, affinity and kind of concern. Another company that I'm interested in as well, in Nigeria, is working with currency traders, right? So how do you, understanding the nuances of currency traders, thinking about how to productize some of their challenges and help them be the best currency traders that they can be, right? So that's an example of building like a common, like building community and what it can do. Um, Essentially, once you have that community, you kind of just start to drive the normal kind of product customer development process. And that's the, kind of the idea of kind of identifying like the biggest customer need, validating it, and then prioritize what you validate based on the kind of customer personas and product features that come up in the customer development conversation. Those are all things that from a community perspective, are a lot easier when you have a captive community right in front of you. And then the most important thing for communities is there are kind of three levels of value, right? So there's incremental value, right? And incremental value, or there's passive value. People get value from being in a community, right? The kind of transactions of, support, all of these support, and then camaraderie, all of those things are valuable. Um, the the second layer is kind of incremental, right? And this is where early on most products should play. Product managers and product managers should play. Is, hey, let's look at areas where we can provide incremental value. Will it scale? We don't know, but we're just we're using incremental value to identify what actually can really work to drive exponential value. That next tier of exponential value is where you find enough synergy within the community to say, hey, we're going to focus on, we've gotten incremental value. We see an opportunity based on the data that we see that, okay, we can build this thing, or we can build these sets of features that can drive value for like the collective group. And so that's kind of the new approach and the thought process that kind of takes, TAM, like total addressable market, serviceable addressable market, all of those things are super important. But most companies don't even get to start talking about their service addressable market in reality, right? Most companies fail because they don't drive value for their service obtainable market. And in building these communities, you can get closer to driving value for that obtainable market so that you can start having these bigger conversations. And in reality, like your serviceable attainable market is just in the grand scheme of things, your serviceable attainable market is just a cluster of communities similar to the community that you're building. So the easier you can capitalize on a community, be it 10 people, be it 100 people, be it 1,000 people, the easier that it starts to make more sense to like move towards that attainable opportunity. And so those are just my thoughts on why community is so important, or community-driven development is so important. And so this area is a little bit more, this is kind of the, one of the areas that um, we've, I've kind of leaned into over the last couple of years, and I kind of preach as a way to discuss product management going forward, right? We all need to think of ourselves as, especially product managers, we're scientists that don't really always don't really have the answer, right? Um, and how and most scientists that don't have the answers use experiments to get them closer to the truth. So as scientists, as product manager scientists, we should really focus on developing hypothesis and helping our hypothesis process drive what we should be doing, right? And so, when I think about, running experiments on your community, less of features and more about outcomes, questions, and assumptions, and then focus on what you're trying to learn versus what needs to be built, right? And so when I think about how to do it, there are a couple of different things that I think about. One, you want to start to list your questions and assumptions that you have about your market or your customer segment. Then you want to start to figure out, you want to start to prioritize your questions, assumptions based on your previous interactions with your customers. Hey, this will be important, this might be not be as important. That in itself is a hypothesis that you can test, right? And then you start to develop you start to take these questions and assumptions and develop hypotheses on them. And then once you've done that, you can test the hypothesis with an experiment. And so an experiment is not necessarily just about, hey, let's build a feature. It's about delivering value, or it's about answering a question, right? And so I've seen a lot of people, people build solutions without building a product, right? Delivering value to show that value can be created, and then using that to validate different parts of their business, right? The best founders that I talk to will have data on this on every part of their business model. They'll say, well, when we tried to validate this part of the business model, here's the data we found, and they speak like a scientist. And that really helps to it helps to show that founders have done their homework, but two, it also helps to show that as much as as much as it's challenging to build a startup, the methodology around taking hypothesis and an experimental approach helps you drive closer to the answer in a more structured way, which is super helpful when you don't have as many resources, or even if you're resource constrained. And resource constraint is not necessarily don't have resources, you're just on a budget, right? And those are all really important things, in large companies, small companies as well. And then once you've kind of built that experiment, you learn from it, and then once again you go back to the top, and then you decide, okay, should I once this is validated or not validated, and then you kind of go through the list again. But these are kind of just ways to experiment with your community, but also figure out like more and more about your customers, right? Any other questions? I'm gonna go into conclusions.
Yes, go into conclusions, and I can ask you some questions.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So just quick pointers in conclusion. So bring 1.0 and 2.0 strategies together, right? Build a community and use some of the feature prioritization methods to help drive like what you're going to experiment, right? Think about your customer, take some of the customer frameworks on top of your community and use that to drive real value, like use that to decide which customers you're going to go after. The market, honestly, most of the time, the market will take care of itself if you can focus on identifying a particular customer segment and identify a particular customer segment and develop value for them. The bigger question there, it becomes more about, business model, right? Which is a whole nother conversation for another day. So use both strategies to drive the best outcomes. You also have to think about who your stakeholders are in these realities. So, I think theoretically in the world, right, we hope that, okay, well, it's just a PM or a founder steering the ship. But in reality, your customers, sometimes you have UI, UX, sometimes you have engineering limitations, you have sales, you have other corporate entities that are kind of funding you, you have investors, you have all of these different things that are competing for kind of prioritization, right? So that's also going to drive, that's also going to muddy the water a little bit around what gets built first. And so that's something you should think about. How are you going to manage and prioritize things that stakeholders, outside of customers come to you with? Another area to think about is, before we conclude, is where you are in the product lifecycle. So a lot of the stuff I talked about is super helpful in the early kind of product formation stage. If you're in a more, if you are building if you're in a more matured market, and the reason you're building that product is to just compete, sometimes you just need to copy, right? You just want to copy to compete, right? A lot of people are in that space, right? And that's fine, right? But you don't need to go through all of this. You already know, hey, we're just trying to take up market share, right? So that's not an issue, right? But if you're in let's say a greenfield market and you don't understand much and there's not much data on that opportunity, you're going to have to do a lot of the field research by building out the community, getting the data in place so that you can make the best decisions you can. Or if people question your decisions, you have data to back it up. And then kind of, once again, money, right? There's a different perspective on a lot of these things if you're dealing with like naira, or like one naira, or 100,000 naira, or 1,000,000 naira, or 1,000,000,000 naira. So it just depends on the scale. Like the value opportunity depends on, should depend on the scale of how much effort you put into it as well. I always say, my whole thesis oftentimes is drive value for the people that'll pay for it, and then ultimately give the people that need it the most what they need as well. But you have to start with who needs your product the most, and that will help pay for the people that want it but may not be able to afford it. So that's from one perspective of money. The other perspective of being cash constrained as a product team, and resource constrained. So those are all the things that I think about as well. And that's all. Thank you so much. You can, if you're interested in asking me more questions outside of the chat, you can @ me at Twitter. That's my Twitter handle there. And then I'm also on Instagram most of the time. So that's another channel. And then if you're I've read a lot, I've wrote a lot on some of these concepts. So if you go to chiga.io and go to my blogs, you can find some stuff on a lot of this. So I think that is it. Thank you so much, and I'll hand it back over to Uche.
Yeah, Chika, just leave your screen shared. I'm just going to ask you a few questions. There haven't been questions from the audience, but I have a couple of mine. I'm not sure why people are not asking questions. It's either you have so thoroughly confused them that they're still trying to get themselves, or you've so thoroughly giving a lot of value that they're still trying to just process everything you've said to them. Okay, so either of them, I think it was awesome, right? So So guys, I'm not sure why you're not asking questions, but hopefully by the time I ask this question, it could help you. We still have like a couple of minutes, just a few minutes, not up to 6 minutes. So let's see how it goes. We're supposed to end by 5, okay? But we didn't start on time. So we still have like 8 minutes. We started by 4:09, okay? So Chika, I'm going to ask you, what I take away from your talk is use a combination of product development 1.0 and product development 2.0, right? A mixture of both. So, and community, the community app, you recommend the community approach heavily. And so I want to ask you, what are some of the key activities in community building?
Definitely, yes.
What, in your opinion, are some of the key activities in community building?
Definitely. So I think some of the key areas in community building are, as I mentioned prior, facilitate ways to drive passive value, right? So there is just value of people being in a community that are apparent, right? And sometimes that includes helping people solve major challenges, helping people deal with some of the issues that they run up with. There's a framework called jobs to be done. And jobs to be done it's not used in a community perspective, but it's a framework that helps reframe user stories into the idea that a customer has a job to be done, right? But from a community perspective, I think that when you're building your community, you have to assume that each community member has a job to be done, and then there are collective jobs to be done in the community, right? And so how do you, as a community manager or somebody that's building this community, help them be the best version of themselves in the job that they're doing, right? I mentioned in the presentation, like for mothers in South Africa, like how do you help moms with some of the nuances of being a mother, like feeding, or where to get the best diapers. And so there are these exchanges, these micro exchanges of value that I think that's the first layer that most community managers or community builders should emphasize and should work on. And that increases the amount of stickiness that members and allegiance members feel for the community. When you're getting that initial value, that's really helpful. The next level is the kind of incremental value. So how can you build off of the passive value to create synergies, right? So that means, collectively we have this power, so let's get like a perk for this community. Let's get something to inject that helps all of the community members do something really great. Passive value is facilitated by the community member or community manager and community members. Incremental value is created by someone that decides to kind of lead and facilitate the community. Doesn't necessarily have to be the community builder themselves. And then exponential value is when you build a product around a community. So imagine a reality where a group of moms have like maternity insurance, right? What does that look like for a group of moms, right? Or what does that look like for for currency traders to have like a remote a peer-to-peer network on some digital peer-to-peer network that helps them do their jobs better as well. So I think taking the jobs to be done framework and applying it to community building can help you kind of expose and unlock some of these areas of opportunity to help grow the community.
Chika, thank you so much. But I like for us to be a bit I like for us to get a bit, break it down a bit further, right? So community building entails stuff like curating a mailing list or building a Facebook group or a Facebook group around a particular around a particular issue, creating a mailing list that helps you message people and get them to participate in activities and as well as events, obviously, right? Around a particular cause. Do you think that from your suggestion, it will look like this is a far better approach as opposed to surveys, right? So for instance, I want to create a power product, or I want to solve some power issues. Nigeria, we have a lot of power issues, right? And I want to solve power issues, right? So instead of creating surveys, right, and sending to random people to say, can you tell me what your power needs are, this, that, blah, blah, blah. So you're saying, hey, you know what? Why don't you go and create a power users group, where you discuss issues surrounding power and all of that stuff and provide information and stuff. So basically people coming there are coming to see that, are coming because they have interest in solving their power problem. So it becomes easy for you to check out what issues are. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And I think even to go even further, the way that I look at it is that today's community is tomorrow's customers, right? And the best kind of, and I mean, Uche, you've mentioned this before, the best kind of investors that you can get are customers, right? And so I think building around these pain points, providing incremental value in the way of events, forums, ways to fix, not totally fix, but maybe incremental fixes, and then using that data to drive a solution that can help everybody in that community is a great way to create a proof of concept around challenges, around solutions. And is it better than surveys? I think surveys are one-dimensional, right? Surveys are oftentimes, and I'll be completely honest, a lot of us don't know how to make really good surveys, right? There's a science to making surveys. There's a science to that kind of research. And oftentimes we're better at feeling and understanding when we've given value and when people get value. That is easy to understand, right? Survey results are oftentimes not the best, they're helpful and I think they're good, but in context, they work they work along with a lot of the other experiments that can be helpful to contextualize them.
Now, nice. I don't want to belabor this particular topic, but I sense that it's something that a lot of our people might need to engage in. So I'm going to ask you two more questions. One is community building the same thing as maintaining a social media handle? Is it the same thing? And then secondly, is community building approach sector agnostic? In other words, would it work for an FMCG company? Would it work for just like it would work for a tech company? Do you think it is sector agnostic? So those are two questions I have. But before you take that question, someone says in the group, I can attest to the impact of community on product development. I got valid feedback from few early adoptions of our brand. This helped us develop a market fit product faster and eliminated waste. And that's from KR Foods. Okay, so Chika, over to you.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, is this, you mentioned, is this sector agnostic as your first question?
That would be the second one, but I mean, you can take it as a first, no problem.
Oh, okay. So is this sector agnostic? So here's the thing: most companies should do this, Like this is not, it's not a, you know, it is not sector, it is sector agnostic. Like most companies should do this. Most companies do this. Like, you know, when you think about a lot of enterprise companies will have a board of clients, right? Like a board of clients that are advisory board of clients that will essentially help them guide and steer a lot of the things that they're doing, right? So some companies, the best companies in some form or fashion, have these kind of communities, right? I think this is something that, you know, it helps in early stage, but this is something you can take and you can build on top of, and really compete and really create a unique competitive advantage in the world we live in, right? You see it in entertainment. You know, the beehive is not not just a bunch of bees. You know, there's you see it in, you know, that's why Clubhouse is becoming such a you know, is such a hit like the way it is. There's just so much value in bringing people together, um and talking through their concerns and being able to drive products to them. It's a lot cheaper than I'm not supposed. It helps for more effective advertising in the long term, a more effective market, and as mentioned by KR Foods,
Okay.
faster product market fit. Your first question. What was your first question again?
No, basically, whether it is the same thing as maintaining your social media handles.
Okay, so I think it's more deliberate than maintaining your social media handle, right? It's much more deliberate, right? I think a lot of people, it's a lot more deliberate and focused, right? So I think, for example, one of my friends that, you know, runs a financial like community in here in New York, a global financial community out of New York. He has, you know, the handle, but he also has like an internal community, right? An internal community that you have to like say we're going to opt into, right? Because ultimately, if you think about it from a real community perspective, communities need boundaries, right? Communities need a unique value, also need a, you know, unique value proposition. And so having a social media handle may be helpful to get your top of the funnel people engaged in your community, but there's going to have to be, at the core, there's going to have to be a place where people feel safe, and there's going to be a heavier concentration of people just like them having these same issues. So they're like closed wall versus open wall communities, right? And so these open wall communities exist on like most social media sites. So a public Twitter handle will be something that like, hey, you know, be a part of this affinity group and see all the things that we're doing on a top end, right? But there are conversations that happen in private Slack channels. There are conversation that happens in private Telegram, WhatsApp groups, and those are kind of the real communities that are important, because there's a high concentration of individuals in a closed wall environment, and they're talking about their challenges in a very like definitive way. And so that's also something to think about. You know, I think having social media channels at the top of the funnel is important, but driving down and having these like closed walled communities is super important for trust and for value for community members.
Awesome. So guys, there you have it. You should go build I think you should go build a Slack channel, or build a Telegram channel, whatever it is. But start building a community for your brand. It's very important. You have people talk about Tesla. You see, you have people talk about Tesla a lot, but Tesla essentially is the community. The same thing with Apple. You know, farm boy. It's the reason why they hold an event every year, you know, to celebrate the community, essentially. So the same thing Google does. So I mean, you just got it. So Chika, thank you so much for taking time to join us. today. This is the whole of this month. We're going to be talking about product development. If it's not going to be too much of us to ask from you, I would like to say, if it is possible, you can join us on the last day of the month, on the last Friday of the month, on a panel session where we'll have to then do an open session and have conversations around product development, basically. So the last edition of this is going to be a panel session, right? But next week, we'll, even though Chika has discussed this from, okay, Chika, before I let you go, you had you had my ask, right?
Oh yes, no, definitely, I'll be there.
Awesome, thank you. Now the next session on Friday, this coming Friday, is going to be another fantastic session. We're going to have Ebere Akadiri join us all the way from Netherlands. Ebere, like I said to her, is a very restless person. Ebere was a major player in the quick service restaurant space in Port Harcourt before she had to move over to Netherlands. So she understands what it means to create products, tangible products, and market those products. So if you know, okay, so we're going to be sharing her profile with the community very soon. But you see, you have to be, regardless of what you do, like Chika's session today, right? You see, it touched on almost all the sectors, right? Even though it was supposed to be a tech focused stuff, right? So Ebere is going to be talking about the FMCG space next week, but as like today, she's going to also try and touch on other places. So come prepared to ask questions. Today you didn't do so well. I'm sorry. I have to say it the way it is. I was expecting more questions. I know Chika put out a lot, and it was easy for us to just say that, hey, he was so clear. But the truth is, whenever we put out a question, a topic like this, you should also go on your own to do some research about those topics. I mean, don't just wait to come and learn. Just come and listen to the story, to whatever the speaker is going to say. Because when you go, we put out these topics to make you go research. So when you go research, it becomes easy. You definitely have questions for the speaker when you go research, because there are things he may not have touched that you saw that was confusing. So you can ask that question, right? This is one way to benefit from what we are doing from this weekly session. My brothers and sisters, I can tell you, it's not easy to put this together, but we've made a commitment to do this every Friday. But it will be more rewarding, most rewarding, to see you benefit from this. And so if I have to give you tips on how to benefit from this, then I have to do it. So please, when we put out topics like that, go and do your own research, especially as it concerns your business, so that by the time you join us, you already have questions you want to ask, okay? And then you're waiting to see if the speaker is going to answer those questions that you have, in his presentation. And, and if it doesn't, you should be able to ask those questions. And then even if it does and answers your questions, there are things he said you should be able to, relate to what you already read about, and then it becomes easy for you to ask questions and engage. Thank you so much to all the people that engaged. We're going to be rounding up on this session now, but this is not the end of the session. Like I said, next week is another session. The next week after that is another session. And then the last Friday of the month is a panel session, right? But one thing you have to do is, I need you to take the link of this particular session and share it across groups. Let more people learn from this, okay? Share it across groups. share it across different groups that you belong. Let more people learn this. The community is better when we learn together, okay? Let more people learn and let the knowledge be available. Chika would normally charge to do this training, but he's graciously done this training with us for free. Chika, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for it, for doing this, right? And taking out time off your very busy schedule to do this. Thank you so much. And then also accepting to come in for the last session. In closing, I'd like to remind as many of you that congratulations to those of you that already took the advantage to join NextPod, the NextPod University opportunity that we shared. Congratulations to those of you that already got the admission for your MBA and then for your BA. Congratulations once more for taking advantage of the free registration fee waiver. And for those of you who haven't, it is still up. There is scholarship every month until we exhaust the 5 slots we have. If you want to know how to join, please follow our handles and you'll see the information there. Well, otherwise, just do bit.ly/ss-scholarship, and then you get the details and you'll be able to join that, okay, and take advantage of that. By the way, there's an opportunity for you to win a merchandise from NextPod University if you apply to join their session, to join any program this February, because it's their 2nd year anniversary and they're celebrating it, okay? So you have an opportunity to win a merchandise. It's a great stuff, I promise you. I've taken some courses with NextPod, and that's why I can tell you this. I understand how it works. We'll be announcing the scholarship people when the time comes. So just keep your eyes open. We'll be announcing the people that get the scholarship when the time comes. Thank you, everyone. And do have yourself a beautiful weekend. It's time for us to say our byes.
Bye-bye.
Hey. Yeah, it's time to say byes, everyone. Thank you. The link I talked about earlier was SS Scholarship. That's it. I've just posted it on the group, so you can click on the link and then go check it out. And please remember to share this video across your social media handles. If you're not following Startup South, our handles are Startup South NG, and you should be able to join our newsletter. We have a newsletter called Wave Thread. Every Tuesday morning, we send out opportunities, including funding opportunities. So you may want to join, subscribe to our newsletter, bit.ly/Wave Thread. Okay, I've just dropped the link. Subscribe to the newsletter, and if you have announcement, the Wave Thread, you can also put your announcement on Wave Thread, and it's free. Okay, if you're looking, we have close to 2,000 subscribers already on Wave Thread. If you're looking to fill vacancies, opportunities, vacancies in your business, or you have a new product, or you have something you're celebrating, it is important for you to send us a mail so that we can include it on Wave Thread. So not on our Facebook group. Please do well to join the Facebook, your information by yourself on the Startup NG. And that's Startup NG is our now. Thank you so much for joining. Huh? Oh, really? Chika, thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me.